Well, parts of the United States have been gripped by Arctic conditions. It's so cold that parts of Niagara Falls have been frozen solid, leaving long spears of ice cascading down from the fall's edges and glacier-like mounds rising up from their plunge pools. Well, the icy temperatures have hit the middle of the country, then they moved to the east coast and south. Temperatures have fallen as low as -19 Celsius. Well, the weather is proving just as extreme on the other side of the globe too. Two cyclones have hit the northeast of Australia. Tropical cyclone Marcia brought winds of up to 125 miles an hour to parts of Queensland and the Northern Territory. The government said so far there are no casualties. It is ready to offer assistance to the emergency services and said that the standard natural disaster recovery arrangements were in place. Well, for more on those weird weather phenomenon, and I'm joined in the studio by Joseph Purugganan, a specialist on climate change and trade. Joseph, thanks very much for coming and talking to us this morning. We're seeing a lot of events like this where it's cold weather somewhere, cyclones, bushfires. Yeah. Can this directly be linked to climate change?
Yes, I mean, what scientists are telling us with greater clarity is that this, they call it extreme weather events, that are becoming the new normal, unfortunately, are directly linked to global warming. And so the experience, the images on TV of the cyclone in Australia are very reminiscent of just a year back, the super typhoon that hit the Philippines. Haiyan, yeah, that you know the devastation that caused.
But Northern Australia, the Philippines, in that area, they always do tend to get cyclones. That's not a new phenomenon. So are we seeing an increased rate of things like cyclones?
We're seeing an greater regularity, and the strength of the typhoons are becoming really problematic. You know, Haiyan, we experience typhoons on a regular basis in the Philippines, but none like Haiyan.
And we saw there also about cold weather in the United States. Mm-hmm. Can something like that be linked to climate change? Because I think there seems to be a lot of people saying that these are just isolated weather events. Mm-hmm. It does get cold in winter in the United States. You do have cyclones in tropical parts of the world as well. But what evidence is there that this is actual climate change and its impact?
Sorry, what scientists are telling us is that global warming is causing rise in ocean temperature. And I think this has triggered a lot of the changing patterns that we're seeing right now.
And what are some of the changing patterns that we're seeing elsewhere?
We're seeing, like I said, a greater regularity of typhoons, stronger typhoons. In Asia, in particular, for example, the planting season has become, in some parts, shorter, some parts longer. So you can just imagine how, because these impacts have really affected the livelihoods of millions of people in Asia and in the world.
There was recently a UN climate change conference. What were the main points that came out of that, and what are the points that some countries are working towards to try and combat climate change? Yeah,
the Conference of Parties, the 20th Conference of Parties, was held in Lima, Peru. And a declaration came out of Lima. But I think for climate activists, climate justice activists like myself, we are very pessimistic that the direction of the UN climate talks would actually result to finding just solutions to the climate crisis. Because in Lima, what the countries agreed to are voluntary pledges from the countries. So whereas before, there was a clear commitment that is being asked of developed countries in particular to commit to cutting down greenhouse gas emissions. In Lima, the lines between developed countries, developing countries were blurred. And now the message is that everyone must commit. We have no problem with this message. Unfortunately, this has allowed developed countries who are most responsible for the crisis that we're facing this has allowed them to skirt away from their commitments, their strong commitments. So we have a system of pledges now, and we'll be seeing in May, maybe around end of May, just how much developed countries are willing to commit to solve this problem of climate change.
And what are the main sort of ways that countries are trying to tackle climate change? Is it reducing carbon emissions?
Yes.
And things like that.
Yeah.
But not, as you mentioned, not everyone is wanting to hop on board with that because they're worried about what impact that might have on their economies.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, no, science is telling us that we need to substantially, in fact, radically change the way the world is developing. No? And I think it requires a shift really away, fundamental shift away from this high-carbon, fossil fuel-based, extractive, industries-based economies. And unfortunately, a lot of the developed countries and emerging big countries like China and India, for example, are, it's hard for them to make that adjustment. And so other ways by which the other proposed solutions are really more market-based solutions that are coming out, which are in the form of, investing in projects in developing countries as a form of offsetting. They in developed countries, they can continue to follow the same development path as long as they are able to invest money and put money in so-called climate, greenhouse gas emission reducing projects in the South. So that has been the approach, more market-based approach, more, trying to get the involvement of corporations rather than a real fundamental shift away from high-carbon economies.
And what happens if nothing is done? What happens if we don't see substantial cuts in the next 5 years?
Yeah, the target of the talks is to maintain at the level of warming to around 2 degrees. In fact, 1.5 degree warming, because beyond 2 degrees, it will be catastrophic. That's what science is telling us. This pledge and review process will result to, the estimates at least say that this will result to around 4 to 6 degrees warming. So if there's no fundamental action on the parts of the government, primarily the developed countries who are most responsible for climate change, then we will see catastrophic results, unfortunately.
Okay, Joseph Purugganan, thank you very much for coming and talking to us about the issues of climate change.
Thank you.